How we doing, everyone? It's Dr. Dano. We are in week e-commerce, and I want to go through, in this video, through a number of articles here, some of which I like a whole lot. Speaking of articles that I like a whole lot, our first one here, Strategy in the New Economics of Information, Evans and Worcester. Now, I will be completely honest with you that at least the last 4 years in a row that we've gone through this module, I've debated whether I'm going to pull this article out or not. And, I mean, you read it and it's downright comical, some of the examples that we have in here. Maybe that's one of the reasons why I like it so much. I mean, when we're talking about CD-ROMs and encyclopedias, and it's funny. But you have to understand, from the academic perspective, or at least my history with this was 1997. And this was one of the first articles that really started to wake up the academics to the potential of the internet. Now, these two guys are not academics, they're actually consultants. And the book here that I have on the screen, Blown to Bits, was the book that was, this article is basically the summary for the book. You don't need to buy the book. The article has everything you need to know in it. To make a long story short, what I really wanted, there's one monster nugget that I keep coming back to that is why I can't pull this article yet. And it's this concept that I have in front of the screen right here. And what happens is that in traditional advertising and marketing, there's always been this trade-off between richness and reach. Reach means how many, and this is the main nugget of the article. Reach means how many people could you potentially target? How many people could potentially see an ad? i.e. television, you have incredible reach. You have very, very long reach. Perhaps I should have put an arrow at the end of these things. But you cannot personalize a TV ad. Everyone sees the exact same ad. You know? Or we could have a lot of richness, personalization of a direct mail piece, but then we're really limited on reach, how many people we could potentially send something to. You know, so advertising has always had this trade-off between the more people you want to reach, the less personal the message could be. The more personal you want to make the message, the less reach you would have. To the point where the richest of all marketing vehicles is a professional salesperson. And an in-person salesperson cannot reach that many people at all. So salespeople tend to be used in high-valued, business-to-business, complicated sales. Now, that said, in my eyes, the internet and what we've been talking about all semester, we're starting to see this line here, where we are starting to get significantly stronger reach and still be very rich. Now, maybe it's not a direct 45-degree angle. Maybe it's like this. It could be flatter a little bit here. But there's certainly, in my opinion, I'm seeing this trend line where Amazon we have the technology now that Amazon can target me and target you and target my neighbor individually, having high richness, at the same time having very strong reach. iTunes has something like more credit card accounts than any other e-commerce site in the world, even more than Amazon. And iTunes has the ability, if they spend a little bit more money on infrastructure, to target people individually based on app, book, and song. You know, there's information that they have. They could target us better. They really could. And this trade-off here has been disappearing. It's been disappearing. Okay? So I did this on... I tried to draw on previous videos, and it turned out really poorly. So I decided to just do a little Word document here. The next article we have... Oh, let me hit pause for a second. I forgot to get something. Pause. Okay. We're back. The next article, Strategy in the Internet. To give you a little context about this one, if we look at the date, this was March 2001. And you have to understand that in the history of Web 1.0, 99 and 2000 were two of the craziest years in Wall Street with regards to Web 1.0. The bubble was exploding. It was expanding and expanding and expanding and expanding, to the point where finally Michael Porter had to step in. This is the longest HBR article that we've had so far this semester. It will be by far the longest one that we'll have all year. He stepped in and said, okay, look, this is ridiculous. You guys are all crazy out there in Silicon Valley. And to the point where we have on page... Words to the Unwise, the Internet's Destructive Lexicon on page 73, the box in the bottom right-hand corner. You know, there was a time period where they were making up their own terminology. Pure play, clicks and bricks, and they were creating metrics. And more than anything, they were ignoring the balance sheet. And when I say they, I'm talking about these Silicon Valley firms during Web 1.0. The Pets.coms of the world, the Dr. Coops of the world, the grocery stores that they tried to build back then. You know, they were ignoring fundamental strategy. And what Michael Porter did in this article was try to calm the masses and say, look, I don't care if this is internet or not. You think internet's going to replace the world. This, whether it does or not, is irrelevant. But what is relevant is strategy still exists. And strategy does not change just because you're using a digital platform. I mean, I love this article because this is my main mantra. You know, social media is an application, but you still need a strategy. You still need a why to use it. Okay? This is the book of books, by the way. By the way, it says author page here. I have no idea what all this stuff is. But this is the... Well, this is competitive strategy. What's this? This is an updated version of it? No, this is an old version of it. No, this is an updated version. It's called competitive strategy. But the reason why we have the term competitive advantage, the reason why we have the value chain that we see in this article and the 5 forces we see in article, Michael Porter is the granddaddy of all strategy books, of strategy thought. He's a Harvard professor. He's been there forever. And you can't get through your MBA without talking about Michael Porter. And I'm sure that some of you have already had Michael Porter stuff. So if we were to get into this article, the main nuggets is on page 67. Here's the 5 forces model. And Michael Porter, although he took about 6 or 7 pages to get to it, made it very clear that the 5 forces model still is the same model you would use whether you're an electronic, internet type scenario or not. And he hammered that really well. The next major nugget on page 68 is a spectacular one, and the myth of the first mover. During Internet Bubble 1.0, the main argument that all these firms were making were, we have to be first. Being first is better than, you know, their main strategy, how they were getting funded, how they were making a case for themselves is, it was like a land grab. It was a gold rush. It's better to be first. You know, there is a first mover advantage. There is a strategic thing behind it called first mover advantage. But what Michael Porter articulates very well here is that first mover advantage, go back to page 67. You know, first mover advantage is significantly weaker if there's no barriers to entry. So what if you're first? If there's no barriers to entry for someone to come up and create a web page the next day, it doesn't make any difference whether you're first or not. And if we look at all the dominant web businesses from Web 1.0 and then rolled into 2.0, I mean, Yahoo predated Google. Who's better and who's still hanging around now as the main search competitor? You know, if there's low barriers to entry, first mover advantage is significantly weaker. That is a nugget. That's a nugget. I really like page 71, where we have our strategic value proposition. We have all these very good 6 principles. And then the last, I already mentioned page 73, the destructive lexicon. The last one in the granddaddy of them all in 75 is the value chain. You know, we have inbound logistics operations, outbound logistics, marketing, sales, and after-sales service. Now, I'm going to come back to the value chain in another article, in a minute or two. But this is really how firms create value. And these are the major buckets that you potentially create value. This is a fantastic article, a strategy article. This is one to keep for a very long time. Our next article, what every CEO needs to know about the cloud. Okay? Very good article. This one was written in 2011. In 2011, the cloud was a lot more mythical than now. It was a monster buzzword then versus now. Right? So some of this is more definitional. For those of you who are more comfortable with the cloud, this article was probably an easy read. For us that want to know more about the cloud, this was probably a very good primer type of an article. You know, I think the cloud, as buzzy as it was in 2011, big data is the one that's replacing the cloud. But they're very similar. You know, you can't have big data without the cloud. My other main nugget on this article is on page 128 and 129. And here's some good ways for you to think about how do I use the cloud strategically. And we have infrastructure, platform as a service, and software as a service. And there are very good examples of all of these written in the article. But from a strategic reason, if you want to talk about the cloud, here's 3 really good strategic reasons to use the cloud. And I think that's everything that I wanted to do cloud-wise. Next, we have competing with free. This is a spectacular article. Love this article, June 2011. And what we have here up on the screen is this guy named Chris Anderson. Now, some of you may know him as the editor of Wired. Some of you may know him from this Long Tail book he did. But his second book after the Long Tail, which is 2010 here, is Free. And really what he's playing off of is the freemium model. You know, basically customer acquisition via free. And there's some very, very good strategies you can pull out of this article. You know, where's my slide here? Particularly, let's talk about 128 and 129. When we say the freemium model, and we say in Chris Anderson's book here, free, you know, everything should be free. And this is his most recent book, Makers, which is the MakerBot movement. I've heard a lot of podcasts about this, but I haven't read this book. These two I'm extremely familiar with. But the freemium model is, instead of charging someone for the service, you monetize them a different way. In other words, Google doesn't charge you to use Google. They monetize you through advertising. Facebook doesn't monetize you through the service. There's no monthly fee to be part of Facebook. There used to be a monthly fee to be part of AOL, but that was because you had to be charging for the dial-up. That's how AOL made all their money. But you need a revenue stream. So how do you make the revenue? You know, strategy number 1, you upsell. How many times have you downloaded an app on your phone and it was free, but if you wanted to do something more with it, you had to pay 99 cents or $2.99? That's called the upsell. Free to get trial and an initial customer base, then you upsell them. Second strategy, you cross-sell. And this is Amazon is spectacular at this. You know, you have some kind of a customer base, and then they buy something from you originally, and then you, from there, you have them as a client or a customer, and you cross-sell them into a different category. 3 is you charge third parties. Basically, if you have a large customer base, you can charge people to have access to that large customer base. Or, you know, from a data perspective, you can create analytics about your customer base and sell the analytics on what they do in this given category. Finally, you can bundle. And sometimes we call this the razor and blades model, which actually comes up in another article. The next one, as a matter of fact, where, you know, you need 2 things. You know, iTunes doesn't work without an iPod. You know, a razor doesn't work without the blades. They basically give you the razor away for free because they make all the money on the blades. Bundling. Like this article. Real quick hint on the last part of this, not too much of a tangent, on page 110. Why Microsoft should take its free competition more seriously. Oh my God, this has been a major discussion point for the last 2-3 months here now with Microsoft and Ballmer stepping down. Microsoft made all its money off of software, and they would charge for the software. Microsoft made all its money off of operating systems, and they would get tremendous fees from the Dells of the world and the Lenovo's of the world to have Microsoft as the operating system. Well, we're getting into a mobile world where you don't need Microsoft, and most people are not charging for their operating service, for their operating software. And then there's free versions of Office out there. Both Google has one and Apple has one. So Microsoft has to rethink their model soon, or they're not going to have a revenue stream. Our last 2 articles are relatively new. March 2013, first time this article really was used in class. And here we're talking about intermediaries, and my new buzzword is multi-sided platforms. You know, and we have the easiest way to talk about this article. If you're really into Amazon, by the way, this is a huge feature in the Atlantic that's been buzzing around the internet. The Amazon mystery, what's up to the strangest tech company? What's the strangest tech company really up to? All right. Let me leave this up here for now. I think the best way to talk about this article is through page 106. I love a continuum, and a continuum is a line, endpoint from here to endpoint from here. Like our first continuum is from a pure reseller to a pure multi-sided platform. Well, I would call eBay the multi-sided platform just the way it was described in the article. Now, eBay has its advantages, and eBay is very good in a long tail type environment where there's lots of small buyers and sellers, and then from there, the only way to find that super rare Lego set or baseball card is through a long tail marketplace like eBay. Now, Costco, Walmart, Zappos, Target, whether you're online or offline, these are pure resellers. Now, Amazon, to me, is the most intriguing one of all because they're both a reseller and they're both a multi-sided platform. Both from music, both from movies, both from a lot of categories that they never take inventory. They're just a sales agent. And you're actually buying through someone else but using Amazon's platform. Now, the next continuum that we have here is digital content. And I don't think the authors did a great job here. They did a great job when we were talking about retail and e-commerce, because that's more cut and dry. But when we're talking about digital content, yes, Comcast, DirecTV, and Netflix are pure resellers in this thing. But iTunes and the App Store is actually the same thing. You know, they're the whole continuum. You know, so this continuum needs to be worked out a little bit longer, but I like the idea of thinking about it from a pure reseller standpoint or a pure multi-sided platform. I think they do a better job in the car sharing example. You know, you have either a pure rental type scenario, or you have, you know, whether it's your traditional one like Avis, but I would have had Zipcar not in the same category as these guys because of how they operate. Uber is very, very trendy at the moment with the big mustache on the front side of their car. And these get around and relay ride things, I haven't used it myself. I'm not sure of anyone who ever has, but I know it's trending in the area that you actually loan someone your own car. A little crazy, but the last nugget that I wanted to talk about here is on page 108, right under the nice nugget of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. They talk about disruption and disintermediation. Disintermediation means getting rid of middlemen or steps in the process. Mediators. Dis means get rid of, like negative, and mediators. Disintermediation. If we look at the value chain from Michael Porter, we can talk about disintermediation as taking out one or more of the steps in this process. And through some digital platforms, we can do this. You know, there is no inbound logistics when we're talking about pure e-commerce. You know, operations is code. There's no outbound logistics. I mean, it's a lot of these things. Inbound operations and outbound logistics is all the same thing when we're talking about the App Store. Disintermediation. Finally, we have tweet me, friend me, make me, buy me. It sounds like a U2 song. And these are the people that wrote this one. This is a socially centered selling, and they're based in Atlanta. They have some very nice content here on their website. They have some rather impressive clients down at the bottom of their page here. So this is Barbara and Kent who wrote this article. Good for them. I'm sure they got a ton of leads out of it. The first nugget I want to talk about on page 1 is this program called TweetDeck. It's not free, but it is very good. And if you have the money or you're a power user of Twitter, this TweetDeck, and there's about 2 or 3 others that are similar to that, are highly advantageous. Basically what I wanted to talk about here is this is a very good exemplar of how to use social media in a B2B setting. Most of the stuff we've been talking about this semester has been social media in a business-to-consumer setting. And we're starting to see better, you know, the last 2-3 years on the high side, maybe the last 2, better examples are coalescing around a few topic areas where social, and B2B. The big tell in this article is on page 90, the very, very top of the article, the first 2 lines. And really is what we're getting back to is this argument, if you think about it. The trade-off between richness and reach, before in B2B scenarios, we were only here. And we're starting to move, you know, you can argue which way this line is going, but there's no question that we're going in this direction. And what happens is in B2B scenarios in the past, it used to be all push, meaning the salesperson or the company would be out there trying to sell themselves, you know, 24/7. Lots of cold calling, lots of trade shows where you're out there pushing your service. And what happens is we're seeing a lot of B2B sales being generated with pull. In other words, we're calling this inbound marketing or content marketing. If you look at this website here, this is a prime example. Every one of these blog posts, this one's written by Barbara, the same author. This article could, if someone's doing a particular search on Google, this article could be in the top 10. Someone clicks it, says, you know something, this is exactly what I need. I need to talk to this person. Look, call us. We're in Atlanta. And then they're going to ask for Barbara. Why? Because this article piqued their interest, and this article became a pull, an inbound lead for you to start a conversation and hopefully generate business. Now, this example with TweetTech that, this is an outlier example, although I can't see how Twitter can every day come up with a sale like this. But what Twitter and what blogs and what LinkedIn can do, it can provide you an awful amount of leads in a pull type world, in an inbound content marketing type world. So I really like the article when we get to page 91. It says, where social makes sense. There is no question in a B2B type scenario that prospecting is so much better in a social world. LinkedIn, if you have LinkedIn Premium, there's nothing better. If you have the time and you have the ability to do what this firm is doing here, inbound, blog-oriented, you can do it through YouTube, you can do it through Twitter, you can do it through LinkedIn. This is a great way to prospect. I love on this page 91, the second column, kind of direct in the middle, we have this quote. A lead today can be a complaint on Twitter, a question on LinkedIn, or a discussion in a Facebook page, or a blog, or a podcast. Why do you think we see all these white papers out there on the internet? Inbound marketing, pull. Why do you think we see all these free webinars on the internet? Inbound marketing, pull. Page 92. I am going to completely disagree with the authors here. I do not think social is very good at qualifying leads. There are multiple other criterion you need to qualify a lead to see whether it's a good lead or a bad lead. It's spectacular with prospecting. This is the first time I've ever heard anyone talk about social and qualifying leads. Not so sure about that. I agree with managing relationships. I think that is a great way. I think the better way to talk about this with social that I see a lot of B2B firms doing is after sales service, both in a troubleshooting kind of mentality and also keeping the relationship open between our actual users. Problem solving, sort of like the Genius Bar at the Apple Store. That's what social can do for a lot of businesses, particularly technical B2B type scenarios. Product updates, software updates, all that kind of things. New technical kind of things that are coming down the pike. A newsletter to keep people interested in new features or new training for particular complex B2B products and services. That's a great way to use social in a B2B setting. Okay? That's pretty much all I had for this article. That's pretty much all I had for the week. Today is Thursday. Tomorrow I'm going to start working on question videos. Okay? Happy Halloween.